Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session. My name is Dallas Jessup. I'm the Content Marketing Manager here at BrightTALK. And today I have a couple of exciting guests joining me, Michelle Salta and Jeff Kunkin from BrightTALK Studios, to really talk about how business can create video content without breaking the banks. This is a really interesting topic because so many businesses understand the importance of creating video, putting it out there, creating short form content to engage global audiences. But some can be kind of risk adverse. It's expensive, it's time consuming. They're having a hard time proving the ROI, and yet companies that use video have about 50% faster to revenue cycles than their counterparts. But one of the most common concerns that our audience has is video marketing. So really with that, people want to create these high quality production films or video clips, but they don't want to forget the human aspect of their business. Michelle, what have you experienced in the past that really kind of creates and jumps past this obstacle?
Dallas, I totally hear you on how it's hard to sometimes justify a video spend. I think a lot of people are still stuck in the notion of what video was maybe 10, 15 years ago, where it was really quite difficult and expensive to hire a production crew, bring them out for a whole day of shooting, and then edit the resulting video, and then distribute it. But now that we have the internet, now that we have cameras like the ones that are on our laptops and on our phones, it's easier than ever to create video formats that can really stand up to quality. Maybe not the quality that you expect out of an IMAX theater, but definitely enough to do the job. And one of the things that I really talk about with our clients here at BrightTALK is that 70% of B2B buyers are watching videos throughout their entire path to purchase. And before they even touch a salesperson to have a deep and meaningful conversation, they've ingested at least 8 bits of content from you. If they're not ingesting it from content that you've created, they're ingesting it from content that your competitors have created. Also, most of the people who are doing this research online are not the decision makers, but the people who work under them, generally millennials. Right? So if you talk to a modern day marketer, they always want to get eventually to the C-suite or to the decision maker in their sales process. But the path to that person lies with the researcher farther down the track who's starting to vet you only on account of what it is that you're publishing out there. So if you don't have video, I think that right now it sends a signal that you're kind of not with the times, for better or worse. And if you're not using video to leverage your products and services and get people engaged with the story that you're trying to tell, somebody else in your space is doing that. And most likely than not, that path to purchase is going to lead to them instead of to you.
Right. And we certainly, I hear that as well, is if you don't have video in the market, you're missing out on this great opportunity. Jeff, what's been your experience here with clients that are considered, concerned that it may be too unprofessional, whether they're in the SMB or enterprise space, kind of how do different size businesses handle, this video production aspect?
Well, I think they all approach it from, all different vantage points as they get into the space. But, for me, the real key to any of it, whether you're a big business or just an emerging startup, is authenticity in the storytelling and strategy in the storytelling. Knowing, what exactly it is you're trying to do with the video and trying to build an emotional connection with your buyers. So, that can yield all different types of styles and levels of production value. But I always advise clients that, the first thing we have to understand is what is the story that we're trying to tell? How are we going to connect emotionally with the needs of the buyers that are consuming this content? And then let's figure out, based on resources and based on all the other sort of tangential things that affect the overall look and feel, what level we can get to. It doesn't always have to be super highly produced to be effective if it's a strong emotional story. So that often can offset some of the high costs of production value with real strategy.
I'd like to add to that, actually. One of the most popular formats that I see out there right now, and that includes the BrightTALK platform, is a panel discussion. And to Jeff's point, I think it works very well because you're seeing real humans interacting with each other and having a conversation as opposed to having, a set speech that they're delivering. The other thing that a panel discussion, I think, opens up is the fact that viewers nowadays are very savvy and they can detect if somebody is credible or not based on the ease with which they're talking about a specific subject, right? It works for a small and medium-sized business, and it works for small budgets because you can prepare for these kinds of things, right? You can prepare your talking points. You can prepare to get an expert in the space to talk very comfortably about what it is that they know. And you don't need a lot of money to do it. So to Jeff's point, as long as you have an idea of what you're trying to convey and a format that works on a human level, then you can pretty much create a lot of video assets without a lot of money.
And let me just add to that, because that gave me, that reminded me of something that I just saw recently that we did with a client. A panel discussion can also take the form of even a meeting. We did a really great piece that was really just a discussion that was really beautifully shot of different executives in the middle of a meeting in a sort of informal setting. So that doesn't necessarily have the pressure of a moderator asking questions or whatever for the various participants. And the end result was really, really nice. So, there's a lot of different ways to structure a setting and organize a group to create some very compelling content.
I completely agree with that, Jeff. In past experiences, sometimes some of your best experts within your business can kind of choke under pressure when the video camera is put on them. So kind of creating an informal setting creates this opportunity to really get at the meat of what they're saying, and as Michelle, you talked about, people can tell when you know what you're talking about and they know when you don't. So definitely getting people within their comfortable settings and then leveraging kind of those easy ways to film really help kind of create that authentic, easy environment. So Michelle, within, kind of small, agile marketing teams, how do you really help them find their story in an efficient and effective way? Is it based on the, story of the buyer's journey? Is it based on the video length? Kind of, what are some things that you help with clients around this?
Right. I like starting the story with a buyer's journey in mind. Again, to Jeff's point, you want to put yourself in the shoes of the buyer and connect with them emotionally to the things that matter to them, right? So I think one of the most important ways that you can save a lot of time and energy if you have a small team is to first map out that buyer journey. What would it look like for somebody that you're trying to reach? What would it look like for them to go on this journey with you? And what kind of materials would you like them to discover throughout that journey that can help them make an informed decision to ultimately engage with you and your products and services? Secondly, I think that opens up the opportunity to think in different formats. So we just talked about how you can get really great thought leadership either by doing a panel discussion, a moderated interview, or even just a meeting. You can mix those formats up throughout the buyer journey so that nothing costs the same amount. That also gives you savings. And then it'll also open up the possibility for shorter versus longer forms of content, right? Do we really need a 45-minute webinar for this? Or can a 1-minute animation do the trick and then get them to a webinar that then talks about something that goes deeper into the buyer journey? So understanding where the buyer is at, understanding that different formats can affect the mix and can affect different kinds of action. And then also being smart about what your priorities are based on where you are in the market. So if you're a small company and you're just launching, it might make sense to spend $10,000 on a go-to-market video, but not too much sense yet on this huge product demo where you know that the software is going to change in the next 3 to 4 months.
I think that's a great point too about, where you spend your budget is certainly kind of those evergreen pieces of video content that you can kind of spend a little bit more on or, quickly spend money on to get produced. But things that can change, whether it's your position in the market or your product, certainly are kind of ones that you should be a little bit more cautious or at least cognizant of how you want to address them, which, certainly people want to do video. They understand that video is important and that they're missing out if they don't use it. But they're really struggling to find and persuade people higher up in the business that, a short, 3-minute video is worth XK to their business and will really help them generate, and see higher ROI. How do you help your customers kind of advocate for this? What are some things that really people can do to bring videos into their, their own marketing mix?
Well, one of the things we always talk about the videos that we create is that it's not really about the content itself. It's what the content can do for you. So a really great piece of advice that I would give a marketer who's trying to convince somebody higher up to let them try video is frame it according to the result, not according to like how great it is or how beautiful it'll look or how it'll, you always have to go back to what it's supposed to accomplish. And so if you can go up to your CMO and say, listen, if I do a strategic video at this point for $10,000, but it gets us X number of leads that are farther into the buyer's journey than they would have been if we hadn't had this video, what would those, let's say, 100 leads be worth to you? Would they be worth $10,000 to you? Probably, especially if what you're selling is a service that goes over $10,000 per engagement. I think another way to position it would be to say that, again, there's no one way to do a video. We provide video services for as low as $1,800 at BrightTALK. And that drives re-engagement, it drives new signups, it's used in email marketing campaigns to really push people down the funnel. And so, for $1,800, you're getting a whole lot of return on investment on marketing activities that you already have and that you've already spent money and time on.
Couldn't agree more, Michelle. Jeff, do you have anything to add to Michelle's comments from your experience?
Yeah, I think that, Michelle is dead on with everything. The only thing that I would add is that there's a lot of use cases for video, and this is just kind of building off of what she said. But, you can prove the value of video by just asking any executive, when they're scrolling through their Facebook feed or their Twitter feed or their LinkedIn feed, what generally draws their eye? And it's always a visual post, and now with video in social feeds actually auto playing in many cases and playing silently, those are great opportunities for driving real engagement that are they can be very low touch in terms of cost and in terms of effort of production, but they're effective marketing tools. So, video can be used to really improve ROI in multiple settings, but I think anybody that kind of is in the space at all will know just from their own experience kind of what works for them. And, that's just another way of showing it to people.
So that really does lead to one of our other questions from our audience members, and that's really is in the gated versus ungated world of social media is how do clients, prove ROI within their video programs? What is it that really proves the value of leveraging videos? Everyone knows the intangible components of leveraging video, but when you go to your CMO, when you go to your CEO, how do people prove the ROI here?
Well, I think, that's in many ways the brass ring of any marketing effort. How do you really prove ROI? And it's a discussion that we were having 5 years ago about banner ads and impressions and what's the value of an impression versus, a click through or whatever. So we're always looking for the most engaging content. We're always looking for ways to prove its efficacy. I think with video, I like to look to the important metric of session length. This is something that YouTube really began to optimize their algorithms to value in their ranking, which is, how long does somebody stay engaged in your video? Most marketers are concerned with that, because that's really the development of the qualified lead, as opposed to, let's say, just a view. We all know that views can be bought through, through Google or any of the platforms. And what's the real value of that? It's really an impression. A view comes in after 5 seconds of viewing, and then they could click away. But if somebody that actually stays with a video for a long period of time, and you can watch those view graphs, that's a key metric. And those types of analytics are available on BrightTALK and on YouTube and most video platforms. So that's a key. And again, engagement can last. You're concerned with engagement for a 15-second social video and a 45-minute webinar. So there's that's one big one. I think the other metric that's important for me is just shares, right? And because if your audience is actually going ahead and passing this video along on multiple platforms, and again, this is easily tracked and monitored and delivered with a lot of the aggregators that we have now, you can really see what's driving buzz and conversation, as opposed to the ones that are falling flat. And you can optimize based on how you set that up, from the thumbnail to the content to the metadata. All of that information that surrounds the video becomes part and parcel of what drove that ROI. So I think those are two really good metrics to look at, and ways of proving the effectiveness of a campaign.
Yeah, and touching upon the session length, I think that's something that marketers can sometimes forget about. But when you look at web page visits, bounce rates, people leave web pages really quickly. Whereas if you create a short 30-second to 2-minute video and you can engage, inspire, and acquire your target audience, you can capture that attention and really get across your core values. So there's certainly the intangible component of inspiring, while also the tangible component of really capturing their attention and earning their trust to future engagements with them. Michelle, is there anything, do you see the same in the market with yourself, or is there, certainly within different types of companies, do your customers come with you with one metric concern over the other? What do you see?
Yeah, I think everything that Jeff said is great. Absolutely. And you guys touched upon something that's really important, which is attention. I actually just came from a call with a tech client today, and she said that she had two primary audiences. One is an IT professional, and the other is the C-suite person who probably sits on top of the IT professional. And her challenge was, how do I get the attention of the IT professional who needs very specific, very targeted information, but then has to sell it up to somebody who doesn't have a lot of time to absorb all of that information, right? So we came up with a video solution where it was in two parts. The first was a webinar that went really deep into a subject matter, and that satisfied the need of the IT professional. But then we also put a companion piece to that webinar, which was a really fast, punchy, 1-minute animated piece that talked about what was in the webinar. And that way, IT professional can take the 1-minuter, put that up, and show it to his C-level decision maker to say, listen, you don't need all that 45-minute thing. Here's what it really boils down to. Here's why I want to buy this company's solution, and here's why you have to approve the purchase. So there's very many ways to get to the same objective, and very many ways that content can help you do that.
And I think that's such a superb, obviously being a content marketer, I certainly, see the value in that is within video, you as a company have a lot of assets, materials, data, all these exciting pieces that really put you as the thought leader in your industry. And you might run webinars, you might go to events and, present presentations, but getting the snippets and getting the very high level snapshot, great punch points that really drive home your value and putting it into a video you can really repurpose a lot of your content in different types of formats. People at different stages in their careers enjoy engaging with different types of content. We have a couple of Academy resources which we'll attach to this presentation that you can look at, just kind of to how different buyers enjoy engaging with different types of content. But that's definitely, best practices is not having to always create new content, but certainly leveraging what you already have and leveraging a great, content services or video production team to help you really hone in on the 1-2 punchlines. So we have one last question, and it's really around, what's your biggest piece of advice to a marketing team that has never used videos before? How do they bring it into their company? How do they get everyone on board? And how can they really maximize the time and bandwidth spent on really creating these videos?
Well, I would say straight out of the gate, be strategic, start doing some of that work that we talked about earlier in the conversation today in terms of getting in front of a funnel and the buyer's journey and kind of seeing where your gaps are and what you need to fill. And then I would say, don't be afraid to go to a professional. There is a lot that can be done, as we've talked about, professionally, which will ultimately really roll up to the value of your brand. I think a lot of people in this sort of prosumer market feel like, hey, I've got a webcam. Hey, I've got my phone. I can just shoot this testimonial. And they don't realize that it starts to look like, one of those local commercials you see on cable TV where you turn away from it saying, oh boy, that's not exactly a brand I would trust. So you want to, I think at least give the pros a chance, because there's a lot that can be done at a reasonable price. And then, then you have the option always of trying to do something yourself, but at least you've given it that shot.
I absolutely agree. I think going back to our, earlier discussion on prioritization and where is the company in the market? Where is the buyer journey? And where do you want to catch them at key points is a great way to start planning it. But I think the trap that a lot of small and medium-sized businesses especially are prone to is saying, we can't afford video, so we're going to try to do it ourselves. I think that completely undervalues that marketing team's time and energy. Because to be honest, Jeff and I got to where we are right now through 15 years of hard slog. It's hard to get there in the space of a year or even the space of a quarter when you're thinking about, executing a video strategy on your own. It's not to say that it's impossible, and I've seen some great companies come up with really innovative ideas around video because they were strapped for resources. But to Jeff's point, I think that, understanding your priority and where you as a marketer should spend your time and energy, and also understanding that there are lots of professional providers who have a whole range of formats that you can work within, it's just a great place to start exploring where would the most efficiency lie.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing a couple of tips that people can leverage, today, and we hope to continue the conversation and see you guys back soon. Thank you.